Benjamin Netanyahu thought he could send a message to the world that Israel could strike anywhere, at any time, even in the heart of Doha, Qatar. He wanted to prove that Israel's reach was limitless, that its enemies would never feel safe no matter how far they ran. But instead of projecting strength, the strike ended in humiliation. The Hamas leaders he tried to kill survived. Qatar, far from cowering, demanded international action, and the aura of Israeli omnipotence, carefully cultivated for decades, cracked before our eyes. For years, Israel built its reputation on deterrence. Targeted killings from Beirut to Tehran, daring operations deep inside enemy territory, lightning strikes that shocked and awed. These became part of a mythology. Israel as the state that could always act first, always strike hardest, always emerge victorious. The Doha operation was supposed to be another chapter in that story. A bold strike, a dramatic message, a reminder to the world that Israel remained untouchable. Instead, funerals in Qatar replaced victory speeches in Jerusalem. The myth collapsed into failure. The question is why? Why risk such a reckless attack in a capital that hosts one of America's most important military bases, in a country whose wealth and diplomacy give it immense leverage in the Middle East? The answer lies not in strategy, but in the politics of one man. Benjamin Netanyahu has long disdained the very idea of grand strategy. He likes to mock it, quoting his late father's suspicion of the word. But Netanyahu's real strategy is simple: remain Prime Minister, whatever the cost. Since his corruption trial began in 2020, his political survival has overshadowed everything else. Preventing a Palestinian state, containing Iran, even restoring Israeli deterrence. These goals exist, but only in service of his personal fight to remain in power. Every escalation, every new front, every strike across borders is less about Israel's security and more about Netanyahu's own position. War has become his survival mechanism. Without it, his fragile coalition of far-right and ultra-religious partners would crumble, and his career with it. This is why Netanyahu cannot make peace. After the horrors of October the 7th, Israel briefly had the sympathy of the world. He could have used that moment to reset, to negotiate hostages for a ceasefire, to stabilize borders, to secure international guarantees. It was a moment when peace was possible, perhaps even within reach. But peace would have fractured his alliance, and so he rejected it. Instead, he embraced escalation, turning every opportunity for compromise into another excuse for war. The failure in Doha reveals the danger of this path. Netanyahu dreams of expansion, of annexing the West Bank, of seizing pieces of southern Lebanon, of redrawing borders for the first time since 1967. He has fallen in love with the idea of Greater Israel, a vision that excites his coalition but isolates his country. Doha shows the limits of this dream. Military power, however overwhelming, cannot deliver political victory. The targets escape, the wars drag on, the sense of deterrence weakens, and Israel is left bleeding credibility in the very region where it seeks dominance. Europe cannot ignore this. Much of the global South already condemns Israel outright. South Africa has brought cases before the International Court of Justice. Latin America has expelled ambassadors. The Arab world, fractured on many issues, has found common ground in outrage at Israel's campaign. But Europe hesitates. Ireland, Spain, and the Netherlands have taken bold steps, banning settlement goods, cutting military exports, condemning Netanyahu's actions as violations of international law. Yet the European Union as a whole remains timid, whispering where it should speak. Germany shields itself with the weight of its history. France hedges between outrage and caution. Brussels prefers resolutions without enforcement. It is an anti-historical posture bound to the past, even as the present demands clarity. This hesitation has a price. By refusing to confront Netanyahu, Europe weakens its credibility with the very world it claims to lead. While the global South positions itself as the voice of justice, Europe appears compromised, caught between loyalty to Washington and fear of confronting Israel directly. Netanyahu exploits this. Every day the war drags on. Every time Europe chooses caution over courage, his survival politics are reinforced. But the lesson of Doha is larger than Israel, larger than Europe. It is about the illusion of power without strategy. The United States discovered this in Iraq and Afghanistan, where overwhelming force could topple regimes, but not build peace. Russia is discovering it in Ukraine, where brute power cannot substitute for coherent objectives, and Netanyahu is discovering it now, in Doha, where a failed strike exposes the weakness at the heart of his survival politics. Military power without political direction is not strength. It is a trap that swallows leaders, corrodes societies, and destabilizes entire regions. Netanyahu has walked willingly into this trap, convinced that endless war will keep him safe. But in truth, he has become a prisoner of it. He cannot end the war without ending his premiership. He cannot make peace without losing power. And so he fights on, dragging Israel deeper into a cycle of violence that no longer secures its future, but erodes it. The failed Doha strike was not just another skirmish. It was a moment of revelation. It showed that Israel's reach has limits, that its deterrence is no longer automatic, and that its Prime Minister is no longer guided by strategy, but by the raw instinct of survival. For Israel, this means years of conflict ahead. For the Middle East, it means instability spreading across borders. And for Europe, it is both a warning and a test. Europe can choose to remain timid, bound by history, caught between Washington and Jerusalem. Or it can choose to stand with the global South, to speak clearly, to confront Netanyahu's endless war with political and moral courage. But history does not wait for the hesitant. And if Europe fails this test, it may find that in trying to avoid confrontation, it has lost both its voice and its influence. Benjamin Netanyahu wanted Doha to prove his strength. Instead, it exposed his weakness. He has become hostage to his own politics of survival. And in the end, even the greatest arsenal cannot save a leader who confuses endless war with strategy. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis important, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and visit westernrelations.com for deeper insight into politics and power in the Western world.